Can you help get us paint the picture of how big of a problem this is in the US and share some statistics and some other context of how the US compares to other parts of the world?
Sure. So I have some statistics here about where we are in terms of gun violence deaths just this year in 2023 and also how we compare to some other developed countries. So far in 2023, there have been 200, more than 200 mass shootings in the US. We estimate that about every day, 120 Americans are killed by gun violence, and more than 200 are shot and wounded. We also know this is a huge issue in the domestic violence arena. So, about 70 women per month are shot and killed in domestic violence disputes. And gun deaths probably represent around 20% of all injury deaths. That was the percentage in 2021, according to the CDC. And injury deaths include things like poisoning and motor vehicle accidents. So gun deaths are right up there with motor vehicle accidents, which used to, really far surpass gun deaths and gun
Mm.
violence. This is also and has become, since the pandemic, really a huge issue among teens and young adults. So, since 2020, guns have been the leading cause of death for teens and young adults up to age 18, whereas before it was motor vehicle accidents. So, it surpassed car accidents in that particular population. And I'll also say, as of May 1st, we know that at least 13,000 people have died by guns in 2023, and there have been roughly 66 suicides by gun each day this year in 2023. So,
Wow.
and in terms of other countries, unfortunately, the US, as many of you probably know, surpasses almost all other developed nations in terms of gun violence and gun deaths. So, we're looking at about 22 times greater for example, firearm homicides in the US compared to all the countries in the European Union. And we also know that gun violence and deaths is very correlated with how lax gun laws are in certain states. So states like
Mm.
Alaska and Louisiana that have very lax gun laws also have more gun violence and gun deaths.
That's a lot to wrap your head around. One thing that you alluded during these stats to the fact that things have gotten worse and that maybe guns are overtaking things that they didn't used to, where the gun deaths are more than auto accidents and they used to be fewer than or in the same league. But yeah, I'm just wondering about the trajectory a little bit more. If you could comment on that, and is it kind of been a slow and steady increase, or is there some sort of inflection point where it's what's the trajectory in the US?
It's definitely getting worse, I think, with each passing year, especially for teens and young adults. I think there's a real concern around this population because we're also seeing a mental health crisis in that population. And we're seeing a rise in suicide in that population. And I will
Mhm.
also say that in places where, and we'll probably get into this more, but in places where it kind of is a situation that perpetuates itself because in places where there are school shootings, we also see higher rates of suicide among, other
Right.
youths in that area. So this is a problem that's really feeding on itself, and it
Right.
definitely got significantly worse during the pandemic as well.